Hey, everybody, we're live tonight with another Savage Gentleman podcast. And, we took a few weeks off for the holidays, and we took that time to rebuild our set. We got a new, fresh look. We got some fresh faces, too. Joining us is Matt Winslow, and he's kind of a behind-the-scenes guy with Ready Man and Savage Gentleman, so we wanted to bring him out. And, of course, we have with us none other than TheManSpot here live to talk to us about dad stuff.
Good being here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So we're going over what I like to call, the best job I've ever had, and that is being a dad, being a father. And it's something that hopefully you guys listening, you guys watching, have some experience with. And if you don't, then hopefully someday you will. And we just want to talk about that and what it means to us and how we can all be better dads out there, because I think that's something that we all strive to be. It's a new year. So we've got some of those resolutions, and people are trying to better themselves. Nothing better than being a better dad. What do you think?
Well, the thing about it is it's the best job in the world, but it's also the hardest job in the world.
Absolutely.
I look back when I was a kid and how great my dad was, and sometimes I feel like I fall short of that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, especially if you had a strong father figure, male role model, to fill in those shoes is definitely tough. But that's what we're all out here trying to do. And, it's nice because we've got a circle of guys to lean on and learn from each other. And I think that's what's cool about Savage Gentlemen is we've got this community that we've built up where we can learn from each other. We've got you guys commenting some good stuff. Chris Yates says, being a dad is the worst kick in the nuts, unpaid, horrible job you will ever love. And some days it feels like that for sure. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I think when you think about being a dad and you always think back to your own personal experience, and you always think, okay, this is how my dad did it. How am I going to do it? Am I going to do it like my dad, or am I going to do it like somebody else that I wish was my dad?
Sure.
Because growing up, you would always see your friends, and you would be like, why did your dad do that for you, and why doesn't my dad do that? So it's funny when you're a child. Even growing up, there's a big difference between dads just looking at your peers.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone has a different style, and I don't know that there's one definitive right or wrong way. I mean, each kid is different. Each situation is different. But, for us, we're always trying to do our best. I think that's – and we are back. Looks like we had a technical difficulty. Apparently, the internet doesn't want us talking about dad stuff. I don't know. No, I think we're experimenting. New year, new gear, new set. New stuff. There's some glitches, but we're back on track. And again, we're talking about dad stuff. Got a lot of people tuning in. The mean guys, manliness is next to godliness. They're tuning in. So happy to have you guys here. Matt Birchfield's on YouTube tuning in. So in the U.S. Navy. So thank you for your service, sir. So let's talk more about being a dad. Tell us about your kids.
Yeah, let's break it down to our experience of being.
Yeah. So what do you? So Matt, you're actually the veteran.
Surprisingly, I'm the veteran in this
Yeah.
group. I've got a 6-year-old boy, Boston. He's actually turned 7 in February. And the best little kid I could have ever asked for. I'd like to think it's because I'm an exceptional parent.
Sure.
But I just lucked out.
So I have 2 little boys, 2.5 years old and 4 months.
Woo.
2 boys.
Nice. Good for you. Good for you. So I have, and you guys may have seen my little one run around Maverly. She actually comes here to work with me most days, and she just turned 3, and then we actually have a little one on the way, and I realized we haven't announced the gender. So live for all you here, we are having a little boy.
Booyah!
Yes.
Congratulations.
Got one, yeah. So pretty excited about that. Little girls are amazing. I love my daughter so much, but she is the spitting image of my wife, which is amazing. But it'll be nice to have a mini me for myself. I'm pretty excited.
You have a little bud to wrestle with and fight with, and
exactly
do manly stuff with.
Do manly stuff. Well, and I, to an extent, I do that with my daughter as well. Take her out hiking and doing a bunch of fun stuff. But it's something about having a little boy to go along with and do stuff is I don't know, something cool about it. Something cool.
It is. It's a connection thing.
Yeah.
Kind of like a bond.
Yeah. Well, and it evens the score out, right? Because it's like my wife and my daughter. I'm outnumbered. Now we're going to have another boy, so it's evening the household, and I think that's important.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Well
cheers.
played.
Cheers to that,
Hey,
boy.
cheers to that. Hey, cheers.
Yes,
Cheers.
yes, indeed.
Cheers to you.
So let's see. We've got a lot of people commenting in. So Chris Yates, he has 4 kids, ages 25 to 18. Wow, good for you. And you know, you're probably more of an expert on the topic than we are. We're still kind of new at this game
because obviously our limits are 6 years old.
6 years old,
as much as
almost 7.
And they say the fun begins, right, pretty much after 10 years old is when it's just like, oh dear.
I could see that. I don't know. So the thing for me, like the fun really began probably when she started walking and talking. And the older she gets, the more fun, it is, because you get to see the world through a child's eyes, which I think is awesome. And it really puts into light the importance of what your job is today, because you realize, okay, this is an impressionable human being that we as parents are cultivating and growing into another member of society. Yeah. That is a huge responsibility. It's something I'm sure you guys as well take super serious.
Well, it's an absolutely phenomenal feeling when you go to your kids' play or something like that, and they do something or they create an achievement.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to think that you had a hand in doing that.
Yeah, it's cool. And what do you're, because let's see, Little Spot is, how old is he now?
He's 2.5.
He just turned 2.5? Yeah.
2.5. So, I mean, obviously, when I think about being a dad, and I'll kind of change the subject just a little bit, when we think about being dads and we think about our time, our day and age, how can we be a good dad versus the way our dad was, or, the dads before them? And the biggest thing that I can always refer back to is just spending as much time with your kids as possible. And obviously, as being men, we have the responsibility of providing for our family. And obviously, I'm not being sexist here, because women are in the workforce as well, which also just puts all that more pressure as men to, be there for our kids when they need us. Because by far, when I was little and I saw my friends and their dads, I would always be jealous of the dads that were able to actually take their kids camping.
Sure, and do stuff.
Doing stuff with them, because it's like, well, my dad can't do that because he's working right now.
Yep.
And even just being in the moment, we're so bombarded with social media, our phones. If Jeff wants to get a hold of me through email or text, he's going to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So you're always glued to your phone. So it's breaking away from work. And in our case, we're always surrounded by work.
Yeah.
To be in the moment and actually, be present for your kids.
Well, and I mean, for a guy like you that's as active on social media, I'm sure that's got to be tough, because your livelihood is, social media content. You're constantly checking, interacting. So it's like, man, how do you carve out that one-on-one important time? Because I think that even for the rest of us that aren't as heavily involved, we still get sucked into our phones, and we're missing out on some of the greatest moments we could ever experience. What do you do to break away from that?
I literally have to set my phone down and say, okay, in the morning and at night, I at least have to have 1 hour with my boys, without having my phone, technology, or anything around.
No interruption,
I just have to put it down.
Unadulterated.
And literally, I found myself being a better dad when I would actually get on the ground with my boy, play cars with him, get involved. And now that he's getting older, it's actually fun, because now I'm actually kind of wrestling with him. I'm actually throwing him around. Yep. And my wife and my mother-in-law now lives with us. And when they see me
Cheers
play,
to that.
The extra help is great. But when they see me play with them, like, she actually kind of has to leave the room, because I will get really rough with my boy. But
well, that's something I think we're missing, though.
To me, it's just like, I grew up with 4 brothers.
Yeah.
So it was always just hands-on, getting wrestled, getting on the ground. So when I find that I do that with my boy, it helps him get that extra playfulness out of his system.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I'm here with my dad. And then there's a big difference between playing with dad versus playing with mom.
Sure.
Yep.
Mom is really rough, nice. Oh, look at this, look at that. Me, It's like, I'm hands-on, I'm throwing you on the couch. Hey, let's go.
Well, and we got to prepare them for being men, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole thing in today's society, where we have a little bunch of man boys running around. We got to prepare them.
And like you say, prepare for being a man.
If we can take care of their spiritual, emotional, and mental needs, then I feel like we're doing a pretty good job.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the difference of preparing boys to be men back then versus now.
Sure.
Because there's a huge difference now, obviously, with technology.
Yep.
So I've kind of broke this down before in the past of how we grew up versus our dads. So when our parents were growing up, microwaves were invented. It was easy to make a meal. Boom. And then all of a sudden, black and white radio goes to TV. And then boom, all of a sudden when kids start coming home, it's like, oh, you finish your chores, you can watch TV. And as long as kids are watching TV, they're not getting into trouble. It's easy to parent them.
Oh, yeah.
That's technology. Watch TV, good. They're not getting into trouble. I don't have to make them do stuff.
Yep.
But if you ask me, that also makes kids more soft when the parents aren't as firm, saying, hey, go do your chores, go do this or that.
And the other thing, too, I mean, I think back as a kid, we got really good at occupying ourselves, right? You figured out stuff to do because you had 3 channels, right? And for the most part, there's nothing worth in a kid's mind watching except for Saturday morning cartoons. So the rest of the time, you had to figure out shit to do on your own. You didn't have a video game or an iPad or something to occupy.
It's all progression, because then in our time we had the Atari, we had Nintendo,
Yep.
we had video games that would actually occupy us. So then parents, it's all about, how can I get more time to do what I need to do for the family in the house? Oh, good. Video games, that's going to keep you quiet. Great.
Go ahead,
And Matt Birchfield says, let your kids fail at things and figure things out for themselves.
I think that's great advice, Matt.
100% agree with that.
Absolutely.
We need to let them fail.
Yep.
Some of the best parenting moments that my dad had that I remember is when I got into a ton of trouble. I mean, I remember those.
I don't see you as a troublemaking kind of guy.
Oh, man, I was a hellion.
What?
Yeah, I grew out of that
clean
stage.
Cut. Was that the Marine Corps that did that for you?
It was. Once I got in the Marine Corps and had those drill instructors barking at me, it was just, I kept my mouth shut, kept my nose clean, and didn't want any part of that. But, yeah, I mean, it's part of being a boy. Right,
Yeah.
It's getting into trouble. It's scraping your knees. It's climbing trees. It's
and again, as a father of a dad, and my wife would have me by the balls, I'd be remiss to say that little girls can do the same stuff too. Like and I'm probably more cavalier than I want to let my wife know, but I mean, I let my daughter climb on stuff and scrape knees and bump and fall, and because I want her to be every bit as tough as my son is going to be, if not more so, and I think, whether you have a daughter, a son, I think you need to raise them with the ultimate vision of creating a very productive member of society, right? And that's something that I think that we're missing, something that we take for granted, that's our job as a parent, as a dad, as a mom. Jeff tuned in, and Jess Hoffner, a good friend of the show, is like, I'm not a dad, but this is awesome. And yeah, this applies to moms too. And we're speaking as dads because that's what we are. But as a parent, we need to prepare our kids to be who we want them to be, and not let other people do it. You want to fix things around you. It starts with your kids, and not raising them to be little hellions, and sometimes you can't help it. But
and I think it also comes to like putting forth the effort, because
Yes.
I mean, it would be so much easier to give my son the iPad and say, hey, here's your favorite show, versus spanking his bottom and be like, no, you don't do that.
Sure.
And actually parenting. And
Yep.
I think a lot of parents lose sight of that because punishment is a huge part of parenting and correcting a child.
Yeah.
Because I mean, people are afraid to correct them.
Absolutely.
They're
Yeah,
afraid to be
well,
like,
it's the society we live in today. It's frowned upon, and there's a lot of ways to administer correction and check them, as opposed to just letting them get their way and raising spoiled little brats. And as far as iPads and stuff, look, I'm sure there's some parents that use those from time to time, and that's okay. I mean, I've been guilty of just what. The only, because I bring her to work with me. You guys may not know that, but she's here. Sometimes we have meetings, and sometimes the only thing I can do to do that meeting is say, "Okay, sweetie, here you go. Take this."
It's exception to the rule, because I mean, work comes first and able to provide.
Sure.
For your family,
But it's easy to fall in that trap of what? It's so much easier. Just give them what they want. Oh, you want candy, and you're not going to stop crying until you have it. Here's some candy. Here's some TV. And you got to draw that line in the sand.
And that's where it comes back to: is technology hurting our role as parenting?
It probably, it is to an extent. I think so.
And it's kind of hard too, because you can't be that helicopter parent. You can't
Sure.
constantly be on them, because that's not good for them either. So it's striking that balance between letting them do their own thing, but yet making sure that their butt's going to be whipped into shape if they mess up.
Well, and then protecting them too, to not let them go so far. It's like,
Sure.
do I really want them to actually touch the stove to realize it's hot? Probably not, you know,
Right.
but certain mistakes you have to make, you have to learn the hard way.
Absolutely.
So it's, you know, you got to figure that out ahead of time and implement those strategies. So looks like we're getting a ton of comments coming in. Let's see. Anthony Nelson said he's been digging holes for his daughter's future boyfriends. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Chris Yates says the key to raising your children is to remember that you aren't raising kids, you are raising adults. That's a great point. The most important thing you can do is prepare them for the time that you aren't there. I really like that. Let's see. There's some more. So Matt Birchfield was whipped daily. Well, we've been there. I know the feeling of that. Had some tough love from time to time. Let's see.
Let's answer Jeff's question.
What does Jess say?
What advice do you have to distract kids from TV to learn to play on their own these days, especially as an only child?
That's a tough one, and that's something that I struggle with daily, especially, again, bringing her here to the office. You know, I've got to work. I can't just occupy her time. You know, I can't entertain her, but then I also can't just let her watch TV. So for me, it's setting they want to play. They like TV, but they want to play. They want to interact with you. So if you can interact with them and teach them how to play and model what playing is, right? So I'll take her dollies
teaching
and
them how to play.
Yeah, and we'll talk and do stuff. And now I see her basically, acting out the same scenarios that we did. So that's teaching them how to be creative and occupy themselves and developing that imagination. So Jess, that would be my advice.
Yeah. Well, ensuring their interest too. My little boy is to the point where he's discovered Xbox. So it's like I take, we'll say I'll play 30 minutes with you, buddy, and then we got to go do some homework, and then we'll shift and play, more constructive, games and activities.
I think that's great.
I think a big thing also would be, go to a thrift store or whatever. They've got tons of old toys, and it's a means of also making sure your kids have the proper, physical toys they can actually play, so they're not on electronics.
And those old toys are way better.
Yeah,
it's funny because all
durable.
the new action figures and all the new toys that come out just super cheap. You go to the store, a thrift store as it were, buy something old made in the 50s or 60s, and they're just a blast to play with, and they'll last forever.
Yeah.
And they have that nostalgia.
So actually a buddy of mine that I went to high school with is on here, Anthony Abley, and he's talking, he made a couple. So he's a stay-at-home dad, best job ever. And I'm not staying at home, but I'm with you on that. It is pretty awesome. And he talks about, tough love is the best. And, sports. And sports is a great thing when they're old enough. Obviously, I'm an advocate of getting them involved in some kind of activity. Sports is a great way to go, but there's other stuff, extracurricular things. I think that's important.
And I think a big thing also, it just goes back to spending time with them.
Yes.
I told my wife, it's like I have to literally man up and play with my boy to make sure I'm not taking that time selfishly.
Yeah.
Because I'm busy. Social media is my job.
It's easy
DMs.
to do when you're an entrepreneur.
I get hundreds of DMs every day, but I have to say, what's more important, going through those DMs or making sure my boy gets the quality time with his dad?
You got to prioritize.
So
and I think making sure that you're allotting time and being intentional with that time. And I like what you said, being physical. With your boys and just your kids in general. One of the things that I feel like as a society we miss out with is, one, like Anthony said, tough love, right? Parents are too soft. And then two, just physical contact with your dad. As men, we tend to be a little bit more standoffish. And I think you got to get in there. You got to rough them up. You got to love on them. You got to let them know. Moms are great at that. But I think sometimes as dad, we fail to give them that contact.
And it gives you a way to bond with them
exactly.
as well. When you're wrestling, you're getting in with the guys, and it's literally wrestling. So he gets to know, okay, this is a way to play, but it's also getting the aggression out, and it shows, a different way that your son can relate with his dad, unlike he can relate with mom. Although I'm sure a lot of moms
there's some
will
moms
get
that get in there and mix it up too,
and bust them up. But coming from my standpoint in my home, that's what it's like.
Well, and for me, like some of my fondest memories as a kid come from wrestling with my dad. Me and my little brother just in the living room floor getting after it, and him engaging. Like we'd play Nerf guns. We'd have Nerf gun wars with my dad, stuff like that. Like I still remember, vividly getting in there, mixing it up like that, and that's something that I want my kids to remember as well. And let's see. So Scott Mize is chiming in here. You guys keep the comments coming. This is great. Love to hear your feedback. If you're just catching up with us. We did have a little technical difficulty, but we should be back online here about halfway through the show. Getting a thumbs up from Zach. That's awesome. And we're going over being a dad, what that means to us, what we've learned, and want to hear your thoughts on that. Scott Mize says your children follow your lead. If you engage them in outside or physical activities, they will follow you. It's on the parent to make certain the children are a priority, and I agree with that 100%. 100%.
So let's talk about for a second the way, the old saying, that's the way Dad did it.
Yep.
And, I think it's always a way to reference something that's harder than what we have today. So what's something that your dad did that, you're just like, oh my gosh, my dad used to?
My dad, the thing about my dad is we would never buy new stuff, typically. If it was broken, we would fix it or find a way to fix it and limp it along for years. Like there's pieces of equipment that we would have, tractors and stuff that he probably still has that we just figure out a way to make it work. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, it would have been so much easier just to have gone and bought a new one. Like what? Or get the new part, and it's like, no, we will rig up a way to make this thing work.
And unfortunately, in today's society, it's like the things that we buy, a lot of times are just cheap crap that's not worth fixing in the first place.
That's true. That's a great point. Yeah. So for me, like seeing my dad doing that, I mean, the good news is learned a lot of problem solving, learned a lot of mechanic and just hands-on. Because that's the thing. I mean, that's something that, I want to get to the point. I don't think I'm there yet, but I look at my dad, I look at my grandfathers, and those guys could fix or build anything. Like there was nothing that they could not, no job or circumstance that they couldn't tackle. And I think about certain things in my life where I'm good at some stuff, and there's some things that just no chance. And so for me as a dad, I want to level up those skills. I want to be, I want my daughter, I want my son to look at me and be like, yeah, Dad could do anything. And I think that's, with Savage Gentleman, that's kind of that Renaissance man culture that we want to breed, right? Where we can do everything from, spanning the gamut, right?
Yep.
So what about you, Vaughn?
Oh, so I guess the way my dad did it is, I guess the biggest thing would be he was always outside, I guess, doing something.
Yep.
Like even when he was working, he would come home and we wouldn't see him for like at least another 2 hours.
Wow. So
it was always just like, okay, he's home, but he's doing something, whether it be changing the oil in the car, whether it be, just little maintenance things around the house. Like, don't get me wrong, I'd like to say I'm a manly man, but when I go home, I'm not outside for, 2 hours doing stuff like that. Right. So when I look at my dad, I'm just like, he was just always doing manly
Never
stuff.
stopped. Yeah.
For me, my dad was just always there for us. So I played baseball all year round. I was always in California or across the country playing baseball. And he was there to every single game, and he would shift his schedule around to make that work.
Oh, wow.
My sister always had dance. He was there to every dance recital. So making that time to put our needs in front of his was something that, I really try to emulate. But unfortunately, it's just, man, it's tough.
Yeah.
It
is. Well, and again, I feel like the expectation, nowadays we're working longer, we're tied in, the expectation to work from home is even greater. I mean, like you said, you're answering emails, throughout the day. So it's like you're off the clock, but you're technically not, so it becomes harder and harder. But yeah, same thing, it's rare to think of a time where my dad was just kicking back and relaxing. I mean, it wasn't until well after dark that he'd come inside, eat dinner, and then, throw on the TV and usually pass out in his chair, and then up first thing in the morning, back doing it all over again. And man, I think about that, and it's impressive. I mean, that's something that I look at, that work ethic that he had. That's something that, I think he instilled in me, and something that I want to pass along as well.
Yeah. Well, is going back to what Vaughn said earlier in the program, it's carving out that time where you go in and you say, okay, I need at least an hour. I'm going to unplug from everything. And this hour is carved out just for my kids.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we can all, take away. Just divvying up your time and making sure that is just for your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just really being intentional, and we're talking about, New Year's resolutions. I'm sure some people probably have already fallen off the wagon with that. But, really the one thing that we don't get more of is time, and
Right.
becoming a parent, becoming a dad is something that I have become acutely aware of is, you turn around and this little tiny thing, is now running around and talking and getting into messes and that sort of thing. And it flies by. And I think, man, I really have to savor every moment. I'm pretty blessed to get to spend a lot of time with her, but even still, I want to make all of those moments count. So when you're thinking about, this year coming up, that would be something that I would suggest all of us as parents is, really make sure you're allotting that time to be intentional and spend with them.
So we say being a dad, the best job I've ever had.
Yes.
Obviously, when you work a job, you get paid.
Yes.
So what would you say, Matt? Being a dad. What is payday for you? All the effort putting into your kid, what's payday
I
for you?
love coming home. I work really long hours. I love coming home, and no matter what, my buddy is there to play with me.
That's cool.
Doesn't matter. I've had the crappiest day. I can come home. We can wrestle. We can play a little Xbox. We could stay up late, watch some movies, and kick it. And my bad day goes away.
That's cool. Yeah,
Love
I
it.
mean, for me, just having her run up and hug me and if I'm gone for any length of time, if I go to train, because obviously she doesn't come there, so I leave her with mom, and then I'll go do my workout. Come home, and she, same thing, runs up to the door, gives me a big hug, big kiss, and and then she takes me up to her room to show me whatever she's been playing with. Like,
'Cause
that's...
I mean, for you, you put in, at least from my perspective, you put in more time with your daughter than your wife.
Yeah,
You're taking care of her
at the
majority
moment,
of
and
the
that's
time.
that's the thing. So for us, our household is a little bit different. She's the primary income earner, and so I'm the primary caregiver. So it is a little bit different,
So
And
just curiosity, does she choose you over mom?
no. Nope, still no. Mom still wins. Well, and that's part of it too. Is she doesn't get as much time with mom, so mom time is like
That's
sage
extra
made.
Are you the disciplinarian, or is your wife?
Actually, my wife is. My wife is way harsher.
Really?
Oh yeah. I think it'll be different when we have a boy. I think
Yeah.
I'll probably come down on him harder. But like, man, she's got me so routed. It's terrible. It's pathetic.
Well, I think it
It's
comes
so
down to
bad.
whichever parent spends more time with the child, they're not as much the discipline.
It's hard to.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Like,
In my
it's
a good point.
I'm
I
sure
think
every house is different.
Yeah.
But I think overall, because when my mom would say, "Oh, you just wait till your dad gets
Yeah.
home," I'd be like,
Yeah, it's that whole good cop,
My
bad
life
cop
is
thing.
Yeah, and
over.
if he took the belt
Yeah.
off, it was
Yep.
like, Dad,
Yeah.
whatever I did, whatever I'm gonna
Yep.
do, please.
Well, and that's the thing though. Like she knows that like mom's here, mom's pretty tough. But if you push dad too far, and the hammer gets dropped, and so she actually toes the line pretty well with me because dad can escalate it to a level that mom can't reach. So, but it's a good balance. I think my wife fills in really well where I lack, and hopefully vice versa. I want to jump back to the comments here because people are chiming in and
Yep.
love to hear your thoughts. So let's see. Chris Yates says, we will never be as awesome as that generation. Well, not with that attitude, we're not. I don't think that anyone is beyond redemption, and I think that's part of the reason why we're having this discussion right now is like, hey, let's turn the tide. All of us that are having kids, that are raising kids, or just have the ability to influence young people, whether or not you're a dad or not. If you're just a male or role model in general, you have the power to change the tide, right? We can teach the
absolutely.
next
We can shape
generation,
it, yeah.
and shape it. And I think we're starting to get a bit of a backlash in society where it's like, okay, we've gone too far.
The
We got to
pendulum
bring it.
is swinging back.
Absolutely.
It has to.
Yeah, and it has to. And I think there's an ebb and flow. Everyone always talks about, kids these days. Literally every generation has said that.
But I mean, it's true, and I think it also goes to technology. Kids these days were forced to be a little softer because technology makes life easier, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah.
In different
Yeah.
aspects. But
Yeah.
parenting wise, it makes things easier, but it also makes it tougher because there's a backlash with not spending that much time with your kids as they used to.
So Jeff has a great question. Jess wants to know, can you guys talk about how you discipline your kids? Tell me spanking still exists in this ridiculous anti-patriarchy
It does in my
society.
household.
Yeah, no, it does. For us, it's it's actually used pretty sparingly.
I think it has a greater effect if it is used sparingly.
Yeah.
If you see dad escalate and it doesn't happen all the time, like, man,
Right.
I screwed up. I better check myself.
And that's the thing. Like, I almost never raise my voice with her. Like, very rarely. Like, mom will get pretty spun up and check her. For me, I almost never raise my voice. But by golly, when I do, stuff happens. And occasionally, I mean, she's a pretty good kid, and we're pretty fortunate. But occasionally, sometimes they need that spanking. Sometimes they need that physical redirect.
Sure.
And the way I look at it is, if you're not listening, right, I'd much rather give you a spanking now so that hey, there is immediate consequence to what I'm saying, than having you run off, I tell you don't run away, and you run away and you go out in a parking lot, because you don't listen, right? Sometimes you have to bring it to that level. So, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist, but I do think that there's a time and a place for spanking if done correctly. And usually for us, we'll do about, and this is more to Jess's question, we'll do like a 3-strike thing. So she knows it's coming. It's not just, oh, you messed up, this is a spanking. Hey, you keep doing that, you're going to get a spanking. This is your first warning. Continues on. So, this is your second. This is your third. Okay, now this is happening. You chose to continue, right? And we explained that very vividly that, hey, this was a choice that you make. This is a direct result of your action, right?
And
you had an option.
It also lets them know they can't do whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what life is. You cannot do whatever you want unless there's consequences. So in my house, my wife is more time out, but she has broken down and spanked our boy once. But me,
wife spot getting in there.
By God, yeah, I'd probably say maybe I won't say like once a week, but maybe once every 10 days or so. It's just whenever he acts out of line, I am not afraid to spank him. But I'll tell you what, the first time I spanked my boy, it was one of the hardest moments.
I bet.
Ever
Especially
had.
when they're pretty small. And you don't have to spank them hard,
because they're like your little best friends.
I know.
And all of a sudden they do something wrong, and you spank them. They're looking at you like betrayal. Like, you betrayed me, Father. How could you just hit me?
Yeah.
I think the one thing my wife and I have tried to bestow upon our son is treating women correctly. And that's the one time I absolutely lost it with my boy. Is you do not treat your mother this way. That's the one thing my dad bestowed upon us is talk back to dad, you're going to get, but you talk back to mom, you're really going to get it.
Super going to get it. Let's see. So we've got Justin Keck here, first-time listener. So thanks for tuning in, Justin, and everyone else. We got folks on YouTube and Facebook, and so thanks for joining us. Let's see. We've got Mitch Hale says, each kid responds differently. My twins respond completely differently to spankings, timeout, scolding, or hot sauce. I don't know what you do with the hot sauce.
I'll say what Scott just said about how his girls, they preferred spanking over the words. This really disappoints me.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And again, Scott, that comes from, we have younger kids. So, but when you say that, I guess that would really resonate with parenting when your kids get old enough.
And I think my boy is, my boy, he's 6 years old. I think he's at the point where he realizes that when we're disappointed with him. And, that's a good point that you bring up, Scott. Maybe as our kids get older, we should switch tactics.
Absolutely. Well, and she's 3 now, and she's to the point now where I can't think of the last time that I had to actually spank her. If I just say that she's upset me, that's usually enough, and she'll start crying. Like, I mean, she's such a little sweetheart, but that's, and again, like Mitch was saying, each kid is different, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but to say, absolutely, I will never do this or never do that, I think is probably a limited scope on parenting. Like, I didn't think that I was going to do timeout because, like, we never did timeouts as kids. I thought that was stupid. But then as a parent, it's like, you know what? This would actually be a really good situation for that. And again, just like you're being intentional with your time, I think you need to be intentional with however you're punishing or correcting is a way I'd rather say correcting your child's behavior, right?
Yeah. Situation's always going to dictate.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that reminds me of like one of the things, and I think we should all do this, one of the things that we're going to change about our parenting skills versus our parents.
Yeah.
So like my dad specifically, just with my parents in general, if you talked about feelings or you talked about, just how you feel to them, they took that as a form of disrespect. You do not speak openly to me. and so like and it backfired on my parents, because I can honestly say I am not best friends with my parents.
Sure.
Because for the very fact that I never could feel like I could tell them anything.
never developed that
I could never
relationship,
openly talk about that. But my parents, did they raise a hard worker? Yes. Did they raise somebody that would respect authority and people and the elders? Absolutely. But when it comes to actually being able to open up and express my feelings, that is where I can say my parents failed. Because and it took me a while to realize that.
Yeah.
And looking back on, people would be like, yeah, I tell my mom everything. And I'd be like, huh?
What? That's weird.
That means like you're best friends with your mom.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to develop and actually think, okay, when I'm a parent, I'm going to make sure I am my kid's best friend.
Yeah.
It's okay for them to tell me things even if they make a mistake or they do something wrong.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't ever tell my parents if I did something wrong.
Yeah.
For the sheer fact
Yeah,
that
you're gonna
we didn't develop that relationship.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think you also got to develop that emotional side with your kids too.
Yep.
It's hard as men. You go, well, that's kind of fruity,
right?
You know?
Yeah,
And-
that's kind of sissy stuff, man.
But you got to connect with your kids on an emotional level, and that's going to be different for every parent and every kid.
Yeah.
But it's so critical.
Absolutely. Well, and that it teaches them how to connect to other people, you know. And I was really fortunate. Like I had a super open relationship with both my mom and my dad, you know. And I remember having lots of long heart-to-heart talks about, you know, especially as I was older, you know, relationship stuff. You know, when you're in 6th grade and that girl breaks up with you, man, that is the end of the world, the end of the world, right? So. But being able to come to them and talk to that, I think really helped me, you know, to relate to other people. And as we're...
Answer me this. Did you get the birds and the bees?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I did. That was from Dad, though. That would have been weird
Did you
from
get the
Mom.
birds and the bees talk?
Kind of. So it was kind of that like, I'm going to dip my toe into the water on this subject and quickly recoil. Right?
Oh,
It
no.
was like,
We went full potato. And, oh, my gosh, it was pretty...
I think my dad kind of went like, do you kind of get what I'm
saying?
getting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it?
Right.
Mine,
I was like,
but
yeah.
to be fair, mine was like a progression, right? So it was like here's like the, you know, the abbreviated version, right? And it's like, okay, you're a little bit older. We're gonna add a little bit more, and then, you know, by the time I was of age, so to speak, it was like, I think I got a pretty firm concept of what's going on here. Like, man, it was probably more than I need to know.
I don't know about you guys, but kids are learning that stuff so early nowadays. Even when I was a kid, I mean,
you watch a music video and boom, you've already
there
got
it
half
is.
of it right there.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's like, whoa.
Watch a Nicki Minaj video, man.
Jeez.
Yep.
It's
And what you don't get from the music
they can't
video, you
escape.
get from your buddies on the playground.
There you go. That's a good
I mean,
point.
me, like, I never got that talk from my parents at all. And
Yeah.
of course, I had 4 brothers and a sister, so maybe
you-
they just thought they told
filled
me,
it
but
in,
it was
yeah.
one of the others they told. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think that's very important to also just have that relationship with your kids, so they can come to you and ask about anything. Especially now, like you say, they get the information at such a young age.
Yes.
So I think it's critical of not only being a good parent, but also being able to let them know they can come and talk to you about anything. Especially now when you have so many different people identifying as different sex, different this, different that. It's a very confusing time.
Oh, yeah. Like
for
kids
for
don't
kids
know
to
where to
identify
go.
who are they, and it's just
Yeah.
like, no, you are a boy or you are a girl, and that's where we have to describe how society is kind of just going in a different direction.
And there's ambiguity because you can, you know, you're outsourcing this information to teachers, to whomever, right, to media sources where kids are going online and looking up stuff. And it's like, who knows where they're going to get their information.
Well, I want to hear from our viewers. What are some of the steps you guys have taken to kind of protect your kids from the media, basically? I mean, you should never completely close them off, but I obviously don't want my little boy looking at porn. I don't want him looking at, you know, explicit sites or you know, listening to explicit music. So what are some of the suggestions that you guys have?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting because your son is in that age where he's getting access to that stuff. For us, we're not there yet, but it is something to consider. And to be quite honest, I don't know that I'm quite prepared to figure that out yet. But let's see. So Tim is is tuning in, and he says everyone has two chances as a parent-child relationship. Even if you had a bad parent, you can still be a good one for your kids. And that's a great point. So no matter what your relationship with your parent is, you got another chance when you become a mom or a dad. Now you can instill, and cultivate that good relationship. So I think that's important. Zach's giggling about something on here. What are you laughing at? Let's see. Best dad ever, having one son on each side of a talk show. Oh, there you go, Papa.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's Polar Nights turning in from Twitch. So thanks for hanging out. That's a great joke. You got us. Zach's loving it. He is just giggling. So keep those comments coming. Yeah, I don't know what to do about this information age. I know there's like blocks and stuff you can set on your devices, right? I know for me, I want to postpone my child having a communication device, cell phone, tablet, whatever, for as long as humanly possible, because I think about kids today. I think about the technology. If I had access to stuff like Snapchat and stuff when I was a kid.
Let's talk about when you were a kid. Like, what did you have that you would hide from your parents?
The only thing that I did that was like probably deviant that I hid from my parents was probably just talking on the phone with girls till all hours of the night.
The thing is, like, my dad, he would pick up another phone on the other side of the house and just hit mute and listen in on what was going on.
And my parents may have as well, but they never said anything, so I guess I lucked out on that one.
All right, how about you?
You know what? It was kind of hard, too, because I had a cell phone by the time I was, 12, 13.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it's hard nowadays. I swore that I'd never do that.
Yeah.
But, man, it's almost a necessity nowadays. I would say the one thing that I tried to keep hidden from my parents was, when the Victoria's Secret magazines would come and everything, I'd snatch those. And
it was
Sears catalog.
Yeah, Sears catalog.
Okay.
Was that your go-to?
There was the one section of like, ooh,
hello,
Sears. Sears, 1991. Check it out.
Go for it. Yeah. See, I had some cousins. That
the cousin influence there.
The cousin influence. So I got.
You got hooked up.
I got hooked up with some
How old were you when you got a cell phone?
Oh, I wasn't talking about cell phones.
I know.
Okay.
We're talking about the influence. I'm talking.
Okay.
He
right,
got
his.
Coming
back
so
around.
that way, I want to know how old your cousins
see.
were. So basically, I'm gauging what type of technology you had when you were.
Let's see. So I think when I started driving was when I got my first cell phone. So like 16. That's
okay.
when. Yeah. So I was, I was old enough to probably. Well, I was old enough to get myself into some trouble, I guess. Probably the best way to look at that. Someone just noticed our drinking glasses here.
Oh, yes,
so,
indeed.
I made them.
These are made in America by Matt. Matt made them.
I made them.
And there's the bottom of it.
Yeah, check
good
out the
looking,
bottom.
huh?
Oh, there it is.
Pow.
Yeah, boom.
Yes.
Boom.
Savage gentleman. Well, again, for me, I think it goes back to, you want to prolong that as much as possible, but I think when it comes to cultivating your children, it's just having that level of trust with them and being like, this is going to be tempting to do and look up these different apps, because at that point, when our kids do get, 12, 13, who knows what type of apps or different things are going to come out.
By the time my daughter is 13, you could probably stream directly into your cerebral cortex at that point. Like it's just going to go directly into your brain.
Just a direct link.
Plugged into the matrix.
Wirelessly.
Most likely. Yeah, it's going to be. So I don't know. I mean, but that's, as parents, again, we kind of have to safeguard our kids. Like, you don't want to completely shut them off from the world, but at the same time, man, there's stuff that they don't need to be seeing or getting involved in.
And you got to let them know what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
This is okay. This is absolutely not okay.
Absolutely.
And you're going to see it, but be warned.
Yeah.
Do not pursue it.
I think that's a great point. So let's see. So Jody tunes in and says that I don't think you can block your children from media sources in this age. That's where the communication thing becomes so important. You need to create a relationship that makes your kids feel like they can come to you when they have questions about what they're exposed to. And that's a really good point. And I think at the end of the day, that really is all you can do. You can set up blocks on your web browser and make sure they're not going into the dark net. But I mean, I was pretty savvy. Like and I still found ways around that stuff and loopholes. As a kid to get into the stuff that I probably shouldn't have.
Right.
But it's one of those things where you do have to have those open lines of communication. I think you have to start that young. you know, and you have to cultivate it.
And I think that's where it really gets into, you know, for your kids or whatever. It's like, okay, you are going to go to Boy Scout camp, you know, where there's no cell phones, nothing. It's just you, the boys, nature. And you have to set certain things up of being like, yeah, we're going to spend more time going outdoors. We're going to spend more time hunting. You know, it's really, and as a parent, it's like you might want to do something else with your time. You may not be a hunter, but as long as you're getting your kids out there and doing something else rather than just cooped up with a piece of technology,
Right.
I think it's important. And for me, it's like that piece of technology, that's my income. That's how I make money. But
Yeah, sure.
For me, overall, I would much rather throw that away and make sure my kids are raised right.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the
versus
day,
them
that's
spending
far,
all the time with that technology.
far more important. And I think someone commented, if you can scroll up just a little bit, Zach, someone mentioned that they came into a relationship that there was kids already, and I think here Michael Lawrence says, my ex-fiance used to pacify her daughter with an iPad. When he came in the picture, he made her put it down and play with him, even if it was cupcake making, lay on the floor and spend time with her. And man, that is so invaluable. And I do that as much as possible with my kid, because I remember my dad, you know, whenever he could, taking that time to do it.
Yeah.
And that is like one of the best memories I can think of, is just getting in there and having fun with them. And Polar Nights is killing it tonight. He says, don't let the young one have any more alcohol. Yeah, sorry, Matt. You don't get any more. He's too young. So, psych. He's actually been drinking Monster the whole time.
It looks the same. Can you believe it?
Let's see. So Eric Wagner says, completely off the dad topic, but will you guys ever make those glasses for sale? Well, we're
working on it.
In luck. Yeah, that is happening, and we're actually working on, I guess now's as good a time as any, we're actually working on building out a Savage Gentleman store, Savage Gentleman website. We're in the process of that. So that's part of the reason why we brought Matt in here. He's going to be kind of a new face. He's teaming up. He's actually been involved the whole time, but now he's stepping out from the dark recesses.
Yeah, I'll be helping out with product development. I've got a lot of new products, a lot of handmade, made in the USA products, and I think you guys are really going to love.
God bless America.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
All right, back on topic.
Yes, let's get back to it.
If there was one piece of advice, actually you could even do 2 or 3, that you would give a new father, if he told you today, hey man, I'm going to be a dad, what advice would you have for him?
I would say don't rush into it. I was 20 years old when I had a kid, and it made me grow up so fast.
Not prying too deep, but was that by accident? Was that a big surprise? Was that a...
You know, me and my wife got married when I got home from Iraq. I was 20 years old, and she got pregnant right away. No, it wasn't planned. She was on birth control, and
That'll happen.
you know, it was a surprise for sure. But it made me grow up extraordinarily quick, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I absolutely love my little guy, but you know, try to have things planned out, I would say.
Yeah.
How about you, Josh?
Man, for me, in a perfect world, like I don't know that you can ever have everything. The problem with me for planning stuff out, and this is getting into like having our second kid, my wife wanted to time it, you know, around her work schedule and her career and that sort of thing. And
Did you guys plan Averly?
Yes. Yeah. With Maverly, actually, we wanted to have kids around that timeline. We didn't know exactly when. We were like, okay, let's work towards this, and whenever it happens, it happens. And that was kind of how that worked. And then for the second one, we were kind of on that same thing, but she wanted to push it back a little bit later. I was like, no, let's go ahead and
it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
Okay.
And so
now with knowing that background, what advice would you give for me?
Well, as far as planning, I don't
Coming back to
think.
that.
Yeah. I don't think you can plan a perfect time. I think there's no such thing as having a perfect time to have a kid. Plan so that you have your life somewhat in order, but you know, financially, you know, stability wise, like I mean, every time when we had Maverly, when we're having this other one, it's like we're not really 100% ready, but you know, we'll make it work, and all the headache, all the extra, you know, whatever we have to do is ultimately going to be worth it. And my advice as a parent would be just trying to get, you know, squeeze as much juice in every bit of the time that you have, you know, whether that's only an hour a day because you're working and slaving away, or you're like me and you have more ample time. Take all of it.
Take
all of it.
Sorry to cut you off. What was your fatherly advice?
Oh man, I was actually laughing at what Zach put on the screen, but you know what? I would say I don't remember all those emails that I stayed up late to write. I don't remember all the times that, I came home way too late from work. But what I do remember is my son being born, me tackling or wrestling with my little boy, me, going on vacation with him, things like that. So I would say choose your time wisely and make every second count.
Yeah. And I'll add one thing to that, plan out things to make those memories because, she's only going to be 3 once, right? And the world through the eyes of a 3-year-old is a beautiful, magical thing. So, to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to carve out a weekend and we're going to do this thing. I probably am not going to enjoy it, but to her, this is going to be the most fantastic experience she's ever had. And to do that deliberately as often as you can, I think that's another piece of advice. And Manspot, as a father of 2 young boys, what would you say is your sage wisdom?
I think the biggest thing is when we had our first boy and we were sitting in the hospital, and I remember holding him, I remember thinking, of course, my life has completely changed, but I always thought, if there's one thing I can teach this boy, it's just
how to grow a beard.
Yeah, of course, that's a given.
Come on,
I just sprinkled some of these on his face, and those will be born, in about 3 years. No, I think it was just letting them know how much, he's loved. And I think as long as a child knows that they're loved, they'll know that they'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
And it's also, again, just making sure that in a world that's so confusing and so impressionable on so many different people of what direction to go, of what's right or what's wrong, I think the biggest thing is I also just wanted him to know that, God exists, that he also develops faith in his life. And I think it's committing for time. Again, just like what you guys said, it's committing to that time. So I think it's the biggest thing is love, faith, and giving them time. So I think those are the 3 things I would say I could pass on.
I like that. And I think last thing to close on, touching on what you said, we I don't think we tell our kids, people in general, that we love them enough. I think as men, that LOV word, the LOVE word is kind of a 4-letter word that we don't like to throw around. I think it's super important. If we look at society, right, and we look at all the negative things, if we want to boil it all back down to how we got to this, like how could this person do such a thing, right? How could these crimes? They weren't loved, right? Or they didn't know they were loved. Whatever that is, I mean, if we really want to distill it down, it's we need to express that. As men, it's hard for us to do, especially with the stigma, right? Or that's too sappy. And man, you got to say it early. You got to say it often to your wife, to your kid, to your buddies.
With people identifying as something other than what they are is because their parents fully didn't tell them who they were, and where they came from.
And
so they feel like they have to identify as
and become something different
to feel accepted by a group, a crowd, their self. So to me, it all comes back right down to that love. And it comes down to the parents. I know we talk about being a dad, but it's just as much as a mother too.
Sure.
More than anything in our day and age, there are single parent families, whether it's a dad raising the child or a mother. So we're all fortunate right now that our kids have, both mom and dad in the picture.
Sure.
But I think for everybody out there, they're all experiencing. That's easy for them to say. I'm a dad raising this, but again, nothing can replace that advice of just making sure your kids are loved and making sure they have that right direction.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And if nothing else, if that's the only takeaway, I mean, I think that's a pretty solid message, and I don't know where else to go from there, to be quite honest with you. I think that about says it all. Anything else you guys want to add to that, Matt?
Man, it's hard to follow that up. So
I think that's a pretty good stopping point. So from all of us, thanks so much for tuning in. Manspot, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
And
thanks for having me.
hanging out, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of this glorious beard in the future. And everyone else for tuning in, thank you guys for hanging out and chatting with us. Love the engagement, love the comments. So we're back in action. 2018, we've got some big things coming for Savage Gentlemen, so stay tuned for that. Cool products, cool things happening. So cheers, guys.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care. Until next time.